My name is Porter, and at 35 I've built a tech empire from nothing but determination and spite. For a decade, my so-called family excluded me from every reunion, holiday, and milestone like I never existed. Last Sunday, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through my security camera, I saw them, my parents, standing at my gate looking up at the mansion their rejected son had built. I opened the door, spoke calmly, and watched the color drain from their faces. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to prove someone wrong who never believed in you. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Seattle, where the rain seemed to mirror the dampened expectations my family had for me. Our house was small but functional, much like my father Kenneth wanted our aspirations to be. Dad worked construction, building things with his calloused hands, was the only form of creation he respected. He was a traditionalist to the core, believing men should work physical jobs and provide without complaint. My mother Diane existed in his shadow, a perpetually nodding presence, who'd perfected the art of avoiding conflict by always siding with him. Then there was my younger sister Megan. From the moment she was born 3 years after me, she became the golden child who could do no wrong. Her dance recitals were family events that required attendance from distant relatives. Her B+ grades received celebrations. Her interests, however, fleeting, were funded without question. I was different from the beginning. While Dad wanted me playing football, I was taking apart our family computer and reassembling it with improvements. When he brought home model cars to build together, I was coding my first basic programs. The disappointment in his eyes became as familiar to me as my reflection. "Boys don't sit inside all day," he'd say, yanking the blinds open in my bedroom. "It's not natural." Mom would add softly, "Maybe try something your father can relate to, Porter." My teen years only widened the gulf. In high school, I excelled academically but struggled socially. My interests in programming and technology made me an easy target for bullies. When I came home with a bloody nose after defending my computer geek reputation, my father didn't comfort me. "Maybe if you toughened up a bit, they wouldn't pick on you," he suggested, turning back to whatever sporting event flickered on our television. The pattern became clear early on. Megan's activities always took precedence. When she had a soccer game, the family attended. When I had a robotics competition, I took the bus alone. Their calendar revolved around her schedule, while mine was an afterthought at best. The breaking point of my adolescence came when I was 17. After months of sleepless nights, I'd created a program that analyzed traffic patterns to optimize public transportation routes. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was impressive enough to win the state technology competition, earning me recognition from several prestigious universities. The award ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in May. I'd reminded my parents for weeks, even circling the date on the kitchen calendar. The morning of the event, I came downstairs in my one good button-up shirt to find my parents rushing around in a panic. "Megan's dance instructor moved her recital to today," Mom explained, pinning a corsage on my sister's leotard. "We thought it was next weekend." But my ceremony, I started. Dad cut me off. "This is her big solo, Porter. There'll be other science fairs." "It's a technology competition," I corrected, "and it's the state finals." "Well, can you record it or something?" Mom suggested, already gathering her purse. They left me standing in the living room, the proud speech I'd practiced all night crumpled in my pocket. I took the bus to the ceremony and accepted my award in front of an audience of strangers' parents. The 2 empty seats I'd reserved glaring back at me. That night, after they returned gushing about Megan's perfect performance, I quietly retreated to my room and began researching college scholarship opportunities. I'd realized something fundamental: if I wanted support, I would have to provide it myself. When acceptance letters arrived, I found myself facing another hurdle. I'd been offered admission to several excellent programs, but with only partial scholarships. The remaining tuition would require either loans or family assistance. Computer science, Dad scoffed when I showed him the financial aid forms. What happened to engineering? At least that's a real degree. Technology is the future, Dad, I argued. The starting salaries are higher than most engineering positions. So you can make all this money right away, huh? Then why are you asking us for help? His logic was deliberately circular, designed to trap me. In the end, they offered a fraction of what they'd already committed to Megan's future performing arts program. It wasn't enough. Rather than saddle myself with crippling debt, I made the difficult decision to defer enrollment and take a gap year to earn the money myself. That year proved more valuable than any classroom could have been. While working at an electronics store, I met Raymond, a retired software engineer who came in regularly to browse the newest gadgets. He noticed me reading programming books during my breaks and took an interest in my situation. Education is important, Raymond told me over coffee one day, but vision and drive are what separate the successful from the merely educated. Raymond became the mentor I'd always craved, offering guidance, connections, and eventually a part-time job at his consulting firm. For the first time, someone was investing in my potential rather than dismissing it. That taste of support was intoxicating, and it made returning home each night to my parents' indifference all the more bitter. By the time I turned 20, I had saved enough for my first year of college but was reconsidering my path. Working with Raymond had given me practical experience that surpassed what many first-year computer science courses offered. More importantly, I'd begun developing my own app, a platform that connected freelance tech workers with short-term projects. I was renting a room in Raymond's house, coding after hours while working at his firm during the day. The arrangement worked well until Megan's engagement announcement threw our family into chaos. At 22, my sister had found her soulmate, a marketing executive named Trevor, who wore pocket squares and came from old money. My parents were ecstatic. Mom called me daily with updates about venue options and flower arrangements. Dad, usually frugal to a fault, suddenly had no budget concerns. "You only get one daughter's wedding," he'd say proudly, as if I wasn't also their child. The initial wedding budget they discussed was $60,000, money they'd apparently been saving for years. I tried not to think about my college fund discussions when they'd claimed financial hardship. 2 months into the wedding planning frenzy, my app development reached a critical stage. I needed seed money to hire a designer and launch a beta version. The amount was modest, $15,000, and I had a detailed business plan showing potential returns. With Raymond's encouragement, I decided to approach my parents with an investment opportunity rather than asking for a handout. I chose Megan's engagement dinner as my moment, reasoning that the celebratory mood might make them more receptive. The event was held at an upscale restaurant I could barely afford to enter, let alone dine in. I arrived with my business plan printed on high-quality paper, tucked into a professional portfolio. After the champagne toast to the happy couple, I pulled my parents aside. "I wanted to share an opportunity with you." I began opening my portfolio. "I've developed an application that's ready for market testing. Raymond thinks it has significant potential, and I'm looking for initial investors." Dad frowned, already shaking his head before I could continue. "This isn't the time, Porter," he muttered. "This is your sister's night." I know that, I assured him. "I just thought since the family is discussing financial planning for the future, this might be relevant." Mom glanced nervously between us. "What kind of money are you talking about?" I explained the amount and the projected returns, emphasizing that this would be a legitimate investment, not a gift. You'd be shareholders in what could become a very profitable company. Dad's face darkened as I spoke. When I finished, he took a slow sip of his whiskey, set it down with deliberate care, and leaned forward. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice low. "Your sister is starting her life with a respectable man who can provide for her, and you want us to take money from her wedding to fund your computer game." "It's not a game, Dad. It's a business platform that real men build things with their hands, not waste time with computer games," he interrupted loud enough that nearby tables turned to look. "Your sister has made something of herself. When are you going to grow up and do the same?" The restaurant seemed to fall silent around us. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I'd had standing alone at my awards ceremony years before. Mom put her hand on Dad's arm, but her words weren't in my defense. "Maybe if you were more like your sister," she suggested, "softly focused on building relationships instead of always being alone with your computers." Something broke inside me that night. Not suddenly like glass shattering, but slowly like ice cracking under too much weight. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and saw them clearly for perhaps the first time. They weren't going to change. No achievement would ever be enough to earn their approval because the problem had never been my choices. It was me. I excused myself from the table, walked to my car, and drove straight to Raymond's house. By morning, I had packed everything I owned into my car, just my laptop, clothes, and a few books. I left a note thanking Raymond for his mentorship and explaining I needed a fresh start somewhere without distractions. 3 days later, I was settling into a cramped apartment with 2 roommates in a tech-centric city 400 miles away. I took a job at a local startup during the day and worked on my own project at night. The hours were punishing, but every minute spent building my future was a minute not spent dwelling on my past. The first Christmas away from home was harder than I'd anticipated. Not because I missed the family gatherings, those had always been exercises in feeling excluded while physically present, but because the finality of my decision hit me. I was truly on my own now. I sent Megan a Christmas card with my new address. She never responded. In February, I discovered through social media that I hadn't been invited to her wedding. Photos appeared showing my entire extended family, cousins I barely knew. Distant relatives from other states all gathered to celebrate. Everyone except me. The exclusion stung, but it was the casual nature of it that truly hurt. There had been no confrontation, no formal disowning. I had simply been erased, my absence not even worthy of acknowledgement. I made one final attempt at reconciliation, calling my parents' house on their anniversary. Dad answered, his voice immediately guarded when he recognized me. "What do you want, Porter?" "Just to say happy anniversary," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "How are you both doing?" "We're fine," he said flatly. "Was there something you needed?" The message couldn't have been clearer. I was an obligation, an unwanted interruption. After a few more stilted exchanges, I ended the call and made a decision I would pour every ounce of my energy into building my own success. If my family couldn't see my worth, I would create a life so undeniable that their rejection would become their loss, not mine. As spring turned to summer, I discovered through Megan's social media that my parents had hosted a family reunion at their cabin by the lake, the same cabin where I'd spent childhood summers fishing with my grandfather. There were photos of cookouts, boat rides, cousins playing games. I recognized faces I hadn't seen in years. I hadn't received so much as a text message about it. That was the first exclusion of many. Year after year, I would discover family gatherings after the fact. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas celebrations, summer reunions, birthday parties for nieces and nephews I'd never met. Each time the message was the same. The family was complete without me. With family ties severed, I threw myself into work with an intensity that bordered on self-destruction. My roommates rarely saw me. I was either at my day job or hunched over my laptop at the 24-hour coffee shop down the street. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, and meals were whatever I could consume while coding. 6 months into this routine, I met Jason at a local tech meetup. He was a front-end developer with a background in user experience, exactly the skill set my project needed. After hearing my pitch, he stayed past midnight discussing possibilities. "Your concept is solid," he said, sketching interface ideas on a napkin. "But the user flow needs work. People want connection without complexity." Jason became more than a collaborator. He was the first real friend I'd made since leaving home. Unlike my family, he saw value in my ideas and pushed me to refine them rather than abandon them. We complemented each other perfectly, my back-end expertise with his front-end brilliance. We called our app Bridgework because it bridged the gap between tech freelancers and companies needing short-term talent. The concept wasn't revolutionary, but our approach was different. We focused on quick turnaround micro projects that could be completed in hours or days, not weeks or months. Convincing investors proved harder than we anticipated. The gig economy is saturated, they'd say, or freelance platforms are a race to the bottom. We heard no 37 times before receiving our first maybe. Meanwhile, I was working myself to exhaustion. My day job covered rent and basic expenses, but left little for development costs. I took on weekend shifts at a local electronics store, ironically similar to where I'd met Raymond, just to afford the server space and software licenses we needed. Jason was equally committed, sleeping on my couch for 3 months, when his lease ended and apartments in our price range were scarce. We lived on ramen and determination, often coding until sunrise before heading to our respective jobs. Our first real breakthrough came 9 months in, when Bridgework won a regional startup competition with a $5,000 prize. It wasn't enough to quit our jobs, but it validated our concept and opened doors to networking opportunities we desperately needed. A tech incubator offered us discounted workspace and mentorship in exchange for a small equity stake. We accepted, immediately grateful for the legitimacy the association provided. With a real office address and business cards, we finally looked like a proper company, even if our bank account suggested otherwise. Throughout this period of growth, my family's exclusion continued to cast a shadow over my achievements. Every milestone felt incomplete without someone to share it with. Jason celebrated each win with enthusiasm, but it wasn't the same as having family who had known you your entire life express pride in your journey. One evening, while procrastinating on a particularly challenging piece of code, I made the mistake of checking Megan's Facebook page. There, displayed prominently, was a photo album titled Family Lake House Weekend. The timestamps showed it had happened just days earlier. I scrolled through images of my parents looking older, but still recognizable, playing with two small children. Megan's kids, my niece and nephew, whom I'd never met. There were cousins, aunts, uncles, all gathered around a bonfire. Everyone looked happy, complete. No one seemed to be missing me. The photos triggered a depression that lasted for weeks. I withdrew, even from Jason, working mechanically but without passion. Eventually, he confronted me. "You've been a zombie for almost a month," he said, blocking my path to the door one evening. "What's going on?" I hadn't told Jason much about my family situation. It was easier to say we weren't close than to explain being systematically erased. But that night, exhausted and emotionally raw, I told him everything. The childhood slights, the competition with Megan, the final rejection, the ongoing exclusion from family events. Instead of offering platitudes about time healing all wounds, Jason listened. When I finished, he didn't say my family would come around or that I should try to reconcile. Instead, he said something that changed my perspective entirely. "They've shown you who they are and what they value," he said simply. "Now you get to decide what you value and who you want to be." Jason's words prompted me to start therapy, something I'd resisted for years. Dr. Mitchell specialized in family trauma, and our weekly sessions became anchors in my otherwise chaotic schedule. She helped me see that my workaholic tendencies weren't just about building a successful company. They were attempts to prove my worth to people who had already decided not to see it. "Success won't heal these wounds," she told me. "Only acknowledging them and building healthy connections will do that." Gradually, I began building what therapists call a chosen family, relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than biological obligation. Jason was the cornerstone, but soon our circle expanded to include other startup founders, mentors from the incubator, and eventually a small group of friends who gathered for monthly dinner parties, where work talk was forbidden. As my personal life stabilized, Bridgework gained momentum. A tech blog featured us in an article about innovative freelance platforms, driving our user numbers up 30% overnight. We secured our first significant investment, enough to hire 3 employees and finally pay ourselves modest salaries. The day we could quit our day jobs felt like graduation, independence, and vindication rolled into one. We celebrated by upgrading from our incubator space to a real office, nothing fancy but entirely ours. The sign on the door, reading Bridgework Technologies, was possibly the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. That same week, I learned through a cousin's social media that my father had retired from construction, with a party attended by the entire extended family. The exclusion no longer surprised me, but it still hurt a dull ache rather than the sharp pain it had once been. The contrast between my growing professional success and continued family rejection created a cognitive dissonance I struggled to reconcile. How could I be worthy of venture capital investment, employee trust, and industry recognition, yet still not worthy of a place at my family's table? Dr. Mitchell suggested a perspective shift. Their rejection isn't evidence of your lack of worth. It's evidence of their limited capacity to value what's different from their expectations. This reframing helped, but the emptiness persisted during holidays and life milestones. When Bridgework hit its first 1,000,000 users, there was no one from my past to call who would understand what that journey had cost me. Yet success continued to build upon success. Our user base grew exponentially as word spread. We expanded to international markets, necessitating teams working across time zones. Suddenly, the company that had begun in a coffee shop employed 50 people, then 100. When a major tech conglomerate expressed interest in acquiring us, Jason and I spent sleepless nights debating our options. Ultimately, we declined the offer, but accepted their investment at a valuation that made us millionaires on paper. The cash infusion allowed us to scale faster than we'd ever imagined possible. Through it all, I kept tabs on my family from afar, a digital ghost observing their lives through the filter of social media. Megan had a third child. My parents celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary with a cruise. Family reunions continued each summer at the lake house, documented meticulously online as if to broadcast their completeness without me. I never commented or liked these posts. I just watched, increasingly detached, as if observing characters in a movie rather than people who shared my blood. My therapist called this progress, but sometimes it felt like surrender. By my 30th birthday, Bridgework had transformed from a scrappy startup into a legitimate tech force. We'd grown to over 500 employees across 3 continents. Our platform facilitated millions in transactions monthly between freelancers and clients. Industry publications that had once ignored our emails now requested exclusive interviews. The IPO was Jason's idea. I was hesitant. Going public meant scrutiny, shareholders, quarterly expectations, but the potential capital influx would allow us to expand into new markets and develop features we'd dreamed of since our napkin sketch days. After months of preparation, endless meetings with underwriters, and more legal documents than I'd seen in my lifetime, Bridgework Technologies debuted on the stock exchange. Opening bell day remains surreal in my memory, watching our company symbol appear on the big board, champagne toasts with our early investors, and the moment my phone alerted me that my net worth had crossed into 9 figures. I'd become wealthy beyond anything I could have imagined when I'd left home with just a laptop and duffel bag. The financial security allowed me to purchase the home I'd always wanted, not just a house, but a statement. I chose a modern mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood of the city, a glass and steel monument to how far I'd come. 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, an infinity pool overlooking the skyline, a home theater, and most importantly, a state-of-the-art home office, designed to resemble the cramped apartment where Bridgework was born, a reminder never to forget the hunger that had driven me. The house felt empty at first. 5,000 square feet is a lot of space for one person. I filled it with carefully selected furniture art from up-and-coming creators and technology that automated everything from climate control to coffee brewing. But echo chambers are echo chambers regardless of how expensively they're furnished. My success attracted media attention. Business magazines featured profiles calling me a tech wonderkind and self-made millionaire. One particularly flattering article included a childhood photo I'd provided without considering the consequences it was from a family vacation, though I'd cropped my parents and sister out of the frame. That article led to an unexpected LinkedIn connection request from Megan. She didn't message me, just connected silently, watching my professional updates from the periphery of my digital life. I accepted but didn't reach out. What would I say after a decade of separation? Congratulations on the children I've never met, or how are the family gatherings I'm never invited to? Despite professional fulfillment, my personal life remained a work in progress. Dating proved challenging, my trust issues created walls that few could scale, and my workaholic tendencies hadn't fully subsided despite no longer being financially necessary. I dated casually, but avoided deeper connections, always finding reasons why relationships wouldn't work long-term. That pattern broke when I met Amanda during a redesign of our mobile app. She'd been brought in as a contract graphic designer initially for a 2-week project that stretched into months as her contributions proved invaluable. Unlike others I'd dated, Amanda didn't seem impressed by my success or intimidated by my intensity. During a late-night design session, she called me out on micromanaging her work. "You hired me for my expertise," she said calmly, "so either trust it or find someone else." Her directness was refreshing. We started having coffee outside of work, then dinners, then weekends together. 6 months in, she left her apartment to move into my mansion, filling the space with laughter and warmth it had never known. Amanda came from a close-knit family and their easy acceptance of me highlighted everything mine had withheld. The first time her mother hugged me and said she was glad her daughter had found someone who valued her mind, I had to excuse myself to regain composure in the bathroom. It was Amanda who gently suggested I might find healing in reconnection with my family. Not for them, she clarified, but for yourself. Closure doesn't always mean reconciliation. I resisted the idea for months, but it planted a seed. Out of curiosity or masochism, perhaps both, I researched my parents online. Dad had retired from construction as planned. Mom occasionally appeared in community newspaper photos for her garden club activities. They still lived in the same house, though property records showed a second mortgage had been taken out 3 years earlier. More surprising was the discovery that Megan had completed a business degree and now worked as an account manager at a regional marketing firm. Her social media showed happy family photos, but also hints of financial strain, references to budget-friendly vacations and side gigs selling custom crafts online. On impulse, I anonymously established college funds for her 3 children. The financial firm would simply inform her that a distant relative had created trusts for their education. I didn't expect gratitude or contact. It was something I did for those innocent children who didn't choose their grandfather's stubborn pride or their mother's complicity in my exclusion. In another gesture I couldn't fully explain, I purchased a property in my old neighborhood, not my childhood home but a similar house on the same street. Instead of claiming it for myself, I donated it to a nonprofit that provided tech education to underprivileged youth. The Porter Sullivan Technology Center opened with state-of-the-art equipment and scholarship programs for promising students who lacked family support. These actions brought some satisfaction but felt incomplete. Amanda called them unacknowledged gifts offerings to a family that couldn't or wouldn't recognize them. She was right, but I wasn't ready for direct contact. The fear of rejection remained too powerful, even cushioned by wealth and success. As my 35th birthday approached, Amanda suggested a celebration at our home. Not a lavish party with hundreds of business associates, but an intimate gathering of our chosen family. Jason and his wife, my therapist doctor, Mitchell and her husband, colleagues who had become friends, neighbors we'd grown close to. People who knew both my success and my struggles, and valued me for both. The party was everything I hadn't known I needed. Good food, meaningful conversations, no pretense or networking agendas. As evening turned to night, Amanda pulled me aside on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "I've been waiting for the right moment," she said, taking my hands in hers. "And watching you today, surrounded by people who truly see you, feels right." She got down on one knee and opened a small box containing a platinum band. "Porter Sullivan, would you marry me?" The role reversal made me laugh through sudden tears. Of course she would propose to me. Amanda had never been one to wait for someone else to take the lead. I said yes, immediately pulling her up into an embrace, as our friends cheered from the doorway where they'd been not so secretly watching. The engagement made everything else in my life seem more vivid, more purposeful. We began planning a spring wedding, debating venues and guest lists. The question of my family hung unspoken between us. Would I invite them after all this time? Could I handle their rejection if they declined? Or worse, their attendance, if they accepted only because of my success? I was still wrestling with these questions when fate intervened in the most unexpected way. My 35th birthday party was in full swing. Amanda had transformed our home into a celebration of milestones, photos from Bridgeworks' journey, mementos from our travels together, even a recreation of the coffee shop table where Jason and I had first sketched our business plan on napkins. Our closest friends mingled in the great room, cocktails in hand, while a jazz quartet played in the corner. Amanda had outdone herself with the planning, ensuring every detail reflected our journey together. She was across the room, deep in conversation with Dr. Mitchell, occasionally glancing my way with a smile that still made my heart race after nearly 2 years together. Jason raised his glass in a toast. "To Porter, the most stubborn, brilliant, and loyal friend I've ever had. Your birthday is really a celebration for all of us, because without you, none of us would be where we are today." Glasses clinked, cheers erupted, and I felt a surge of gratitude for these people who had chosen to be in my life. As the party continued, I stepped onto the balcony for a moment alone with the night sky and my thoughts. From this vantage point, I could see the entire city's skyline, a vista that sometimes still felt surreal to me. My contemplation was interrupted by a discreet cough from Marcus, our house manager. "Sir, there's a situation at the gate." Marcus handed me his tablet displaying the security feed. I nearly dropped it when I recognized the two figures standing at my entrance, my parents. My father, Kenneth, looked smaller than I remembered, his once imposing frame slightly stooped. My mother, Diane's hair had gone completely gray. They were dressed formally as if attending a church service. "How did they find this address?" I asked, though the question was largely rhetorical. My home purchase had been featured in architectural magazines, and my success had made me easy to locate for anyone truly trying. "They said they're your parents, sir. They're requesting entry to surprise you for your birthday." Marcus's neutral tone couldn't disguise his awareness of my family situation. He'd been with us long enough to know I never received personal calls or visits from family. Amanda appeared at my elbow, having noticed my prolonged absence. Seeing the security feed, she squeezed my arm gently. "What do you want to do?" she asked. A decade of emotions crashed through me: anger, curiosity, vindication, anxiety. "I'll handle this," I said finally. "Keep everyone inside enjoying the party." Amanda hesitated. "Are you sure you don't want me with you?" "I need to do this alone," I replied, kissing her cheek. "But thank you." As I walked through the house toward the front entrance, memories flooded back: Christmas mornings without invitations, to family reunions discovered through social media, my sister's wedding I hadn't been welcome to attend. Each exclusion had cut deeply at the time. Now they fueled a calm resolve. I instructed Marcus to let them through the gate, but no further than the front door. Then I stood in my entryway, watching through the security monitor as their modest sedan navigated my curved driveway. They paused before exiting the car, seemingly intimidated by the scale of the house. My father adjusted his tie. My mother checked her hair in the visor mirror. The doorbell chimed with a sound that suddenly seemed too cheerful for the moment. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. For a long moment we simply stared at each other. 10 years had changed us all. My father's hair had receded further, and deep lines bracketed his mouth. My mother looked frailer than I remembered her, once quick movements now deliberate and careful. I wondered how I appeared to them: successful, certainly, but hopefully also stronger, more confident than the son they'd dismissed. "Porter," my mother finally breathed, stepping forward as if to embrace me. I subtly shifted my stance, maintaining distance. She registered the rejection and retreated slightly. "What a place you've got here," my father said, his eyes darting past me to take in the marble floors, soaring ceilings, and artwork visible from the entryway. "We saw it in that magazine. Couldn't believe our boy had done so well for himself." Our boy. The casual possessiveness after a decade of silence made something cold settle in my stomach. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice calmer than I felt. "It's your birthday," my mother said, as if that explained everything. "We thought it was time to reconnect. Family is family, after all." "Is it?" I replied. "I haven't been family for 10 years. No calls on my birthday, no invitations to reunions, not even a message when my company went public." My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "We've been meaning to reach out. It just never seemed like the right time. You were busy building your career and we didn't want to interfere." The audacity of this revision of history might have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. "That's your explanation for a decade of silence. You were being considerate of my schedule." "The house is even more impressive up close," my mother interjected clearly, attempting to change the subject. "You must have done very well with your computer. Business." She stumbled over the word business, as if even now she couldn't quite legitimize what I'd built. I stepped aside slightly, allowing them a better view of the entryway, the chandelier that cost more than their house, the custom staircase that had been featured in architectural digests, the glimpse of the party continuing in the great room beyond. "Yes," I said simply. "I did very well with my computer business, the one you refused to help start, the one Dad called a waste of time." My father's expression hardened. "Now there's no need to dredge up ancient history. We're here to celebrate your success, not rehash old disagreements. Old disagreements, I repeated, feeling the calm I'd maintained begin to crack. Is that what you call excluding me from every family event for a decade? Not inviting me to Megan's wedding? Hosting family reunions without once reaching out to your son? My mother's eyes filled with tears that I couldn't tell were genuine or strategic. We always loved you, Porter. We just didn't understand your choices. No, I corrected her, you didn't respect my choices. There's a difference. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. From deeper in the house, laughter and music reminded me that my real celebration with people who genuinely cared for me was continuing without interruption. So my father said finally, his tone shifting to something I recognized from childhood, the voice he used when approaching neighbors for favors. We were hoping we might talk to you about something important, man to man. And there it was, the real purpose of their unexpected visit. Not reconciliation, not genuine interest in my life, but something they needed. What do you want? I asked directly. My father looked startled by my bluntness, but recovered quickly. Well, as you may know, I've retired now. The construction business isn't what it used to be. Pensions don't stretch as far these days. You're here for money, I stated, not a question but a confirmation. We're here because your family, my mother interjected. And yes, we could use some help with retirement. I always believed in you, Porter. I knew you'd make something of yourself with those computers. The revisionist history was staggering. I stared at her, wondering if she'd convinced herself this was true, or if she simply thought I'd forgotten the reality of my childhood. Did you? I asked quietly. Because I remember you telling me I should be more like Megan. I remember you sitting silently while Dad dismissed my dreams. I remember you choosing her dance recital over my award ceremony. My father started to speak but was interrupted by my phone ringing. I glanced at the screen. It was Megan. The coincidence was too perfect to be chance. Excuse me, I said, answering the call and putting it on speaker. Megan. Porter, thank God you picked up. My sister's voice sounded different, deeper, more mature than I remembered. Are Mom and Dad there? They just arrived, I confirmed. Quite a surprise. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. I found Dad looking up directions to your house on Mom's computer. When I asked what they were doing, they admitted they were going to visit you on your birthday. My parents exchanged alarmed glances. Megan, what's going on? I asked. A heavy sigh came through the speaker. They've been struggling financially for years. Dad's retirement savings got hit hard in the market crash, and they took out a second mortgage to pay for things they couldn't afford. They've been asking family members for loans for months. When they saw that magazine article about your house, you had no right to interfere, my father snapped at the phone. This is between Porter and us. No, Dad, Megan replied firmly. You're trying to exploit him after treating him terribly for years. It's wrong, and I won't be complicit anymore. The revelation hung in the air between us. My sister, the golden child who had benefited from my exclusion, was now attempting to protect me from my parents' manipulation. Porter, Megan continued, I owe you an apology too. I let this toxic dynamic continue because it was easier than standing up to them. I've wanted to reach out for years but didn't know how after so much time had passed. My father's face had flushed deep red. So this is the thanks we get for everything we sacrificed for you kids. Your brother gets rich and won't help his family, and you betray us by warning him. That's exactly the problem, I said, finding clarity in the chaos of the moment. You see my success as something you're entitled to share without having supported the journey. You see Megan's loyalty to truth as betrayal rather than integrity. My mother began to cry in earnest now. We always loved you, Porter. We just wanted what was best for you. No, I corrected her gently. You wanted what was most comfortable for you. There's a difference there too. I turned my attention back to the phone. Megan, thank you for calling. We should talk more, but another time. I'd like that, she replied, sounding relieved. Happy birthday, Porter. After ending the call, I faced my parents with a newfound sense of peace. The confrontation I'd feared for years was happening, and I was standing my ground without crumbling. I'm going to make this very clear, I said. I'm willing to have a relationship with you both, but it will be on new terms. It will require honesty, including acknowledgement of the past. It will require respect for my life choices and my partner, and it will absolutely require boundaries. What about financial help? My father asked bluntly. We're still your parents regardless of past misunderstandings. That depends entirely on how genuine your interest in reconciliation is, I replied. I won't be an ATM for people who couldn't be bothered to call me on my birthday for a decade. But I would help family members who genuinely want to be part of my life my whole life, not just my wallet. The color drained from their faces as they realized the transaction they'd envisioned wouldn't be so simple. My father's expression hardened into something familiar, the look of wounded pride that had characterized so many of our interactions. So you're going to lord your success over us, he challenged. Make us beg for what should be freely given to family. No, I said calmly. I'm establishing that relationships require reciprocity, something you never taught me, but I learned anyway. My mother reached for my arm. Porter, please. We've made mistakes, but we're still your parents. Yes, you are, I acknowledged. And I'm willing to explore what that means now as adults. But not tonight. Tonight is my birthday celebration, with people who have been there for me during the years you chose not to be. I gestured toward the driveway where their car waited. Marcus will see you out. If you'd like to have a real conversation about building a relationship call and make a proper appointment, I'll make time for that. My father looked like he might argue further, but my mother tugged his arm, finally recognizing the futility of pressing their advantage when they had none. We'll call, she said softly, though whether it was a promise or a placation remained unclear. I watched as they walked back to their car, shoulders slumped in defeat. They looked smaller somehow, diminished, not by my rejection but by the exposure of their own motivations. Marcus closed the gate behind them, and I remained in the doorway until their taillights disappeared down the road. I stood motionless in the entryway long after my parents' car had disappeared from view. The confrontation had left me feeling hollow, yet somehow lighter, as if a weight I'd carried for so long had finally been set down. Amanda found me there, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. Are you okay? She asked, linking her arm through mine. I think I am, I replied, surprising myself with the realization. They came for money, not reconciliation. Amanda nodded. I figured as much. Megan called. She warned me. Apparently she's grown a conscience in the last decade. Leading me back toward the party, Amanda kept her voice low. Do you want to call it an early night? I can make excuses to the guests. I considered the offer, tempted by the prospect of quiet reflection, but ultimately shook my head. No, I've spent enough of my life letting them disrupt my happiness. This is my celebration with the family I've chosen. Re-entering the great room, I was immediately enveloped in the warmth of my friends' presence. If anyone noticed my brief absence or distracted demeanor, they had the grace not to mention it. Jason, however, knew me too well to be fooled. He cornered me by the bar while Amanda was occupied with other guests. Security called me when your parents showed up, he admitted, pouring us both a whiskey. I figured you wouldn't want intervention, but I was ready if needed. I smiled at his protectiveness. 10 years ago I might have needed the backup. Tonight I handled it. And he prompted. And they wanted financial help without acknowledging any wrongdoing, I summarized. Classic narcissist playbook. Jason's expression darkened. After everything they put you through, the surprising part was Megan calling to warn me, I interrupted. She apologized for her role in the family dynamics. People can grow, Jason conceded, though I'll believe her sincerity when I see consistent action. We were interrupted by my phone buzzing with an incoming call. Megan again. Excusing myself, I stepped into my study to take it. Twice in one night, I answered. That's more communication than we've had in a decade. They're furious, Megan said without preamble. Her voice was tight with stress. Dad's calling me a traitor. Mom's crying about ungrateful children. It's like they've completely rewritten history in their minds. That's their specialty, I replied. Are you okay? A bitter laugh came through the line. Shouldn't I be asking you that you're the one they ambushed on your birthday? I've had years of therapy to prepare for this moment, I said, only half joking. You've been in the pressure cooker this whole time. The line went quiet for a moment, before Megan spoke again, her voice smaller. I should have reached out years ago, after Megan's wedding, After the first family reunion you weren't invited to. I knew it was wrong, but it was easier to go along with them. Why did you call to warn me tonight? I asked, genuinely curious about what had finally prompted her intervention. Watching them plot to exploit you was my breaking point, she admitted. But also, my oldest started asking about his uncle. The uncle he's never met but whose company makes the apps his friends use. It made me realize how much I've let their toxicity shape my children's lives too. The mention of my nieces and nephew stirred something unexpected, a longing for connections I hadn't allowed myself to want. How old are they now? 8, 6, and 4, Megan replied. They're amazing kids, Porter. Smart, curious. The oldest is obsessed with computers, actually. Takes after his uncle. A nephew who shared my interests. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd like to meet them someday. I'd like that too, she said, and I could hear the genuine hope in her voice. Maybe we could meet somewhere neutral. Just us, no parents involved. Start small and see where it goes. The olive branch was extended with no expectations attached, unlike my parents' conditional approach. I'd be open to that, I agreed cautiously. There's something else you should know, Megan continued. Someone anonymously set up college funds for my kids last year. The timing coincided with your company's IPO. I remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. If it was you, she said softly, thank you. Not just for the money, but for thinking of them, even when you had every reason to write off our entire family. They're innocent in all this, I replied implicitly, acknowledging the gift. No child should have their potential limited by circumstance or family dynamics. We agreed to meet the following month at a neutral location, a family-friendly restaurant halfway between our homes. After ending the call, I rejoined my birthday celebration with mixed emotions. The confrontation with my parents had gone largely as expected, but Megan's apparent change of heart was something I hadn't prepared for. The party continued well into the night, ending with close friends lingering over digestives in the library, conversations flowing easily between personal and professional topics. These people, my chosen family, had been there during my darkest moments and greatest triumphs. Their presence was a testament to connections built on mutual respect rather than obligatory blood ties. After the last guests departed, and we'd prepared for bed, Amanda asked the question I'd been anticipating. Do you think your parents will actually call to make that appointment? I considered the question carefully. No. Their pride won't allow them to approach on terms they don't control, but Megan might be different. There's potential for healing there, I think. Amanda nodded thoughtfully. Reconciliation isn't always about bringing everyone back into your life. Sometimes it's about making peace with the reality of who people are and choosing accordingly. The wisdom in her observation struck me deeply. For years I'd viewed my family's situation as binary, either complete estrangement or full reconciliation. The confrontation had revealed a third path, selective, boundaried relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The following morning brought confirmation of my prediction. Rather than calling to arrange a proper conversation, my father sent a text message that managed to be both guilt-inducing and dismissive. Sorry if our surprise upset you. Was just trying to reconnect with our son. Guess success changes people. I showed Amanda the message without comment. She read it and handed the phone back with a sad smile. Some people would rather be right than happy. I didn't respond to the text. Instead, I focused on the potential connection with Megan and her children. 2 days later, she sent photos of my nieces and nephew, along with brief descriptions of their personalities and interests. I responded with genuine questions about their lives, beginning a tentative bridge across the chasm of lost years. Our scheduled meeting approached with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. I found myself wondering how much to share about the reality of our family dynamics with children so young. Amanda, ever perceptive, addressed my concerns head-on. Children understand more than adults give them credit for, she said as we prepared for the dinner. They don't need all the details to grasp the essence of complicated relationships. The restaurant Megan had chosen was a pizza place, with an attached arcade casual enough for children to be comfortable but public enough to discourage dramatic scenes. I arrived early, securing a corner booth that offered some privacy, while Amanda waited at home, giving us space for this first reunion. Seeing Megan in person after so many years was jarring. The golden child of my memory had been replaced by a woman with stress lines around her eyes and a cautious demeanor. Her children clustered around her two girls with her blonde hair, and a boy who startlingly had the same serious expression I recognized from my own childhood photos. The initial awkwardness dissolved quickly as the children's natural curiosity overcame adult tension. My oldest nephew, upon learning I made apps, bombarded me with technical questions that revealed a genuine aptitude for technology. My nieces were equally engaging, the younger one climbing into the booth beside me without hesitation, showing me her favorite game on her mother's phone. As the children played nearby in the arcade section visible through the glass partition, Megan and I had our first honest conversation in over a decade. "I was complicit in their treatment of you," she admitted, stirring her drink absently. "I benefited from being the favorite, and it was easier to accept that role than to question it." "We were both children in an unhealthy system," I replied. "The difference is you had to stay in it while I escaped." Megan glanced at her children, a mixture of love and worry crossing her features. "I'm trying to break the cycle with them, making sure they know their value isn't conditional on meeting expectations or fitting a mold. That's all any of us can do, recognize patterns and choose different paths forward," I said, realizing how much therapy had shaped my perspective. By the end of dinner, an unspoken agreement had formed between us. Our relationship would be rebuilt slowly on its own terms, separate from our parents' influence. The children had adopted me instantly, as their tech uncle, extracting promises for coding lessons and app recommendations. As we parted in the parking lot, Megan hesitated before speaking. "They won't change, you know, Mom and Dad. They're incapable of seeing how their actions affected you." "I know," I acknowledged. "I've made peace with that reality. My expectations are aligned with who they actually are, not who I wished they could be." She nodded, understanding exactly what I meant because she'd walked the same path. "Same time next month," she suggested. I'd like that, I agreed, watching as she helped my nieces buckle into their car seats, my nephew waving enthusiastically through the window. Driving home, I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me for years. Not because all wounds were healed or all relationships restored, but because I'd finally stopped allowing the absence of family validation to define my worth. I had built a life rich with genuine connections, professional fulfillment, and personal growth, not in spite of my family's rejection, but because it had forced me to discover my own strength. My parents made 2 more attempts at contact over the following weeks, both thinly veiled inquiries about financial assistance wrapped in performative interest in my life. I responded with polite but firm boundaries, offering relationship-building conversations, but nothing more until that foundation was established. They eventually stopped contacting me, unwilling to engage on terms they couldn't control. The birthday confrontation became a turning point rather than an endpoint. It marked the moment I truly understood that family is defined by behavior, not biology, by how people treat each other, not the accidents of birth that connect them. 2 weeks after my birthday confrontation, Megan and I met at a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. Without children present, we could speak more freely about our shared past and divergent experiences of the same family. She brought photos of her kids growing up, images from the years I'd missed, while I shared stories of building bridge work from nothing. "I used to resent you," she admitted, stirring her latte. "When you left and built this amazing life, I thought you'd taken the easy way out. It took years to realize that staying was actually the easier choice for me, even with all the strings attached. And I resented you for being the perfect child they wanted," I confessed. "For seemingly having everything handed to you, while I fought for scraps of attention." Megan laughed without humor. Perfect meant compliant. Every decision pre-approved, every ambition carefully contained within their comfort zone. "Do you know, I wanted to study business in college. Dad insisted on education because it was more suitable for a mother." This revelation shifted something in my understanding of our shared history. While I'd been openly rejected, Megan had been accepted, conditionally loved for her willingness to conform rather than for who she truly was. Different wounds, but wounds nonetheless. We were both playing roles they assigned us, I observed. The golden child and the black sheep. "Family systems theory," Megan nodded. "My therapist calls it that too." The discovery that we'd both sought professional help to process our upbringing, created another unexpected connection between us. Our parents had unintentionally united us through the healing work their behavior had made necessary. Over the following months, our sibling relationship cautiously rebuilt itself. We established a monthly dinner tradition, sometimes with her children, sometimes without. I got to know my nieces and nephew, delighting in their distinct personalities and watching for the familial patterns we were both determined to break. My relationship with Amanda deepened as wedding plans progressed. Her family embraced me without reservation, her father offering the paternal guidance and support mine had withheld. Their acceptance highlighted what healthy family dynamics could look like, supportive without being enmeshed, loving without conditions. The question of whether to invite my parents to our wedding provoked lengthy discussions. Amanda, ever practical, offered her perspective. Invite them on the same terms you've established for any relationship with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. After careful consideration, I sent formal invitations to my parents and to Megan's family. The accompanying note to my parents was direct. They were welcome to attend as guests who respected our celebration, not as entitled parties seeking financial assistance or attempting to rewrite our history. Their response came 2 weeks later, a terse RSVP card with 2 declined attendance boxes checked, no note, no explanation. Megan confirmed what I'd suspected: their pride couldn't accept attending on terms they didn't dictate. Surprisingly, their refusal brought relief rather than disappointment. Our wedding day would be untainted by tension or performative reconciliation. It would be a genuine celebration, surrounded by people who had earned their places in our lives. The months leading to our wedding brought another unexpected development. The Porter Sullivan Technology Center, my donated building in my old neighborhood, was flourishing, providing coding education to underprivileged youth. The program director contacted me about expanding their curriculum to include business development for tech startups. This conversation sparked a larger vision. Why not create a foundation specifically designed to support young tech entrepreneurs from difficult backgrounds? People whose families, like mine, couldn't or wouldn't provide the initial support needed to launch their ideas. The Bridgework Foundation launched 6 months after that initial conversation with a mission to provide not just funding but mentorship, business development, resources, and emotional support to promising innovators from challenging backgrounds. Each recipient received financial backing, professional guidance, and access to a community of like-minded creators. The foundation's work became increasingly meaningful to me, a way to transform my own painful experiences into opportunities for others. Each young person who received our support represented a potential future that might otherwise have been squandered due to lack of resources or encouragement. As our wedding approached, Megan asked a delicate question during one of our dinners. "How do you feel about spending the holidays together this year? Just us, my family, and yours. No parents." The prospect of creating new family traditions, ones based on choice rather than obligation, appealed deeply. Our first Thanksgiving as reconstructed family was initially awkward, but ultimately healing. Amanda prepared the meal in our home, while Megan's children explored the mansion with unbridled enthusiasm. My nephew Owen, now 9, spent hours in my home office, fascinated by the multi-monitor setup and asking insightful questions about programming. "He reminds me of you," Megan observed, watching him from the doorway. "The same intensity, the same curiosity. I'm making sure he knows those are strengths, not problems to be corrected." Christmas followed our first as a married couple, and my first in many years that felt truly celebratory rather than a reminder of exclusion. We exchanged thoughtful gifts, played ridiculous games, and began building traditions that would carry forward. The absence of my parents was noticeable but no longer painful. It was simply the reality we'd accepted. The new year brought unexpected news. My parents had agreed to attend family counseling with Megan. While they remained unwilling to acknowledge their treatment of me, they recognized they might lose access to their grandchildren if they continued their rigid patterns. It wasn't the dramatic realization I might once have hoped for, but it represented a tiny crack in their fortress of denial. "Don't expect miracles," Megan warned during our monthly dinner. "They're participating, but grudgingly. Dad still thinks therapy is excuse-making." "I don't need their participation in my healing anymore," I assured her. "That ship sailed years ago, but I'm glad they're trying for your sake and the kids." 1 year after the confrontation at my door, Amanda and I received life-changing news she was pregnant. The prospect of fatherhood triggered both joy and deep reflection. What kind of parent would I be having, had such flawed models? How would I ensure my child felt unconditionally valued? Dr. Mitchell, still my therapist after all these years, offered perspective during a session focused on these concerns. The fact that you're asking these questions already puts you miles ahead, she assured me. Awareness of patterns is the first step to breaking them. As Amanda's pregnancy progressed, I found myself increasingly drawn to the work of our foundation. Each young entrepreneur we supported represented a version of myself at 20, full of potential but lacking structural support. Mentoring these innovators became a form of healing I hadn't anticipated, allowing me to provide the guidance I'd once desperately needed. During a foundation event, showcasing our latest cohort of supported startups, I found myself standing back, watching these young creators present their visions with passion and conviction. Some had fled abusive homes. Others had parents who simply couldn't comprehend their digital ambitions. All had found in our community the validation and practical support their families couldn't provide. A young woman named Talia approached me after her presentation, a brilliant concept for an accessibility-focused coding education platform. "Your story changed my life," she said simply. "Knowing someone else had built something meaningful despite family rejection made me believe I could too." Her words crystallized something I'd been slowly realizing over the past year. The pain that had once defined me had transformed into purpose. The rejection that had once felt like my greatest wound had become the cornerstone of my greatest contribution. That evening, driving home to Amanda, I found myself reflecting on the journey from that cramped apartment with roommates to the life I now lived. Success had not healed my family wounds as I'd once naively hoped it might. Money and recognition hadn't magically transformed my parents into the supportive figures I'd craved as a child. Instead, the journey had transformed me. It had taught me that family is built through consistent love and respect, not merely declared through biological connection. It had shown me that the absence of certain relationships creates space for others that might otherwise never have formed. Most importantly, it had proven that validation can only truly come from within. External success means nothing without internal peace. As I pulled into our driveway, I saw Amanda waiting at the door, her hand resting on her growing belly. Beside her stood Jason and his wife Megan and her children, the family I had chosen and been chosen by. People who saw my worth, not as conditional upon achievement or compliance, but as intrinsic to who I am. The confrontation at my door had not been the climactic showdown I'd sometimes imagined during those years of exclusion. It had instead been a quiet revelation that some bridges cannot and should not be rebuilt, while others' unexpected connections formed through shared understanding and genuine care become the true passages to belonging. Looking back on the decade of family exclusion, I no longer feel the sharp sting of rejection that once defined my relationship with those memories. Instead, I recognize that period as the catalyst that ultimately led me to build not just a successful company or a beautiful home, but a life rich with authentic connection. True wealth, I've learned, isn't measured by the square footage of your home or the figures in your bank account. It's calculated in the strength of the bonds you forge, the integrity of your choices, and your capacity to transform pain into purpose. If you've ever felt excluded from a place you thought you belonged, know that belonging isn't something others bestow upon you. It's something you create through the communities you build and the values you uphold. Family can be found and formed wherever genuine love and acceptance exist. Have you ever had to redefine family in your own life? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and redemption. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the family we create matters more than the one we're born into.